to another episode with Just Vanning It. Hello, welcome. All of you, hello. We get asked this a lot, and we are going to explain to you how did we get here. We're going to go right back, and we're going to hopefully we did a bit of research. We got photos. Where did the two of us actually come from, and how did we land up in this situation? So let's jump straight into it.
Proudly brought to you by Icheck TPMS. Yep, so we're often asked, how did we get into a situation?
You know what I get asked a lot about?
What?
Is have I had any beers when I make these midweek episodes? Because everyone comments that. I'll be honest, I've had one beer. We went to go and say goodbye to some really good friends of ours in town tonight. And I knew I had to make this video. So I've only had one beer. And the last episodes I haven't had any beers. And this is actually a cup of tea. You know, too much tea makes you rust.
Right, so this week's episode, we're going to talk you through how we got into this situation of living and travelling full-time on the road. But in order to do that, we need to take you back to where it all started.
Alright guys, so we're going to go right back from when I took my first breath.
Oh, dear.
So guys, I was born in South Africa. I lived majority of my life in a little town called East London. It's in the Eastern Cape, right down the south of South Africa. Now, a lot of people don't know this. South Africa is actually a country. I've met a bloke once and he goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from South Africa." He goes, "Oh, my cousin. Do you know my cousin?" I go, "Who's your cousin?" "No, he lives in Nigeria." Well, Nigeria is a country and South Africa is a country. We're from a little town called East London. It's probably always tell people it was probably the same size as like Townsville,
yeah,
Darwin sort of thing.
No high rises.
No.
Really backwards.
Just cool little country town. Or seaside, sorry. Coastal town.
Yep.
And I went to school. I did all my schooling there. My family's all there. I met all my friends there. And then I ventured over to England in 2003 for 2.5, 3 years. And absolutely loved it. Had to go back to South Africa, and that's when I met Sue. But before we go on about myself and Sue, let her tell you where she's come from. She's got a right bloody go here. Listen to this one.
Right, so I was born in England in a little town called Shoreham by Sea, which is in Sussex. My parents immigrated to South Africa from England in the 1980s when I was a wee babe. So I was raised in South Africa, hence the thick South African accent. Schooled in South Africa, went to university in South Africa, and went overseas to England briefly for just under a year to work and travel.
We were actually in England at the same time.
But we didn't meet there.
I did not even know Sue back then at all.
Yeah.
I'm sure we would have actually bumped shoulders in the old pubs back in London. I was a little bit of a pub rat back in London.
In London?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, both of us individually went to the UK and returned back to our hometown, East London. I actually grew up in a small sort of outlying suburb of East London called Ganubi, which is was like a little fishing village. It was a holiday village. So Derek can drop in a photo of Ganubi because it was absolutely beautiful, and that's where my love for the sea and the beach and boating and fishing come from. And in fact, your love for boating, fishing, camping.
So as we're going along, guys, we'll be dropping a couple of these photos. Now, we've gone right back and looked at and grabbed all these photos. And you've got to understand these photos were taken in the 2000s when cell phones weren't the best cameras. So sorry about the quality. But, you know, obviously today's age, the cameras and that have got so much better. But we'll be flicking these along the screen as we go along. I had a big... So growing up as a young guy, I used to go away, do the dad-son thing, pretty much like it is here in Australia. We used to go camping. We used to sleep under the cars on the beach way back when we were allowed to drive on the beach. Now that might sound a bit funny, but if you actually sleep under the car's exhaust and engine used to be quite warm, and we used to just sleep under there with a sleeping bag, and that's how we did it. There's no such thing as, well, as far as I know, as a swag in South Africa. We've only got like sort of tents in South Africa. Only when we came over here did we, like, someone said, oh, we go away in a swag, and then I had a look at one and I was like, wow, we bought the tent because that's just what we know. But now we've got a swag because it just makes so much more sense. So yeah, growing up as a kid, and then my parents used to actually caravan. My aunt and my uncle used to caravan. I used to go away with my uncle on some weekends on what they used to call like a caravan rally, where we had these caravan sites around East London that we would go to every sort of once a month. All the kids get together and catch up, and so did the adults and stuff. So I have had a bit of that sort of background, and then myself and Sue met. I better get this right. When did we meet? Hang on. I think it's 2007.
Yeah, 2007.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Sue enjoys the same sort of thing as I enjoy, and I enjoy the same sort of thing Sue enjoys, and that's camping, friends, fishing, sort of boating, having a sneaky beer in the pub. She's always up for that, so I think that's sort of why we got along so well, and we met each other through friends.
Yeah.
So once we got back, I got back from the UK, then Sue must have got back from the UK at around about the same time. And then Sue was friends with friends of mine, and that's sort of how we sort of met. And how long have we been together? Oh.
16 years.
16 years. Is that how long it's been?
16
Bloody
years.
hell.
So just to let you know, I've given up the best of my 20s, 30s,
Oi.
and now into my early
Come here.
40s with this man.
But-
so although it's been 16 years, it feels like 3 decades.
Yeah, and how long? We've been married 10 years. This year's 11 years, eh?
Yeah, 11 years this year.
2012, we got married.
Yes.
Yes, and then we went to England on holiday together in 2013, and then we immigrated to Australia in 2014, June, July, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah. Correct.
And we had actually never been to, so the funny story is, when we went to the UK in 2013 on holiday, that was over Christmas. I don't know why we went there in winter, but it still had a good time. Because we could have got in the suburb. But anyway, we actually had booked to go to the UK thinking that our visas weren't going to be ready. And it was like, I think it was October. We got the email to say that our visas had been approved to come to immigrate to Australia. And we should have actually come here in 2000, because we'd both been to England, although we were going to visit Sue's family, because then we could have got a little bit of a view of what we were actually coming to. But instead, we still carried on to the UK, which had a fantastic time, and I also got to meet Sue's family. And when we immigrated over here, we touched down in Perth. We'd never been here before.
No.
So you got to think to yourself, are we crazy that we moved to a country? This is not a holiday. We got permanent residency visas before coming to Australia, so that if you don't know the whole visa thing, that gives us entitlement to actually work here, holiday year, and then after I think 4 or 5 years, indefinitely work as many hours you want, like pretty much everything you guys, citizens can do,
Except vote.
except we can't vote really.
And we
So
can't give blood.
we are eligible now to be citizens, but because we travel Australia, we don't have a fixed address, and it takes, I think, 9 to 12 months to get that actual citizenship. So we've been here 9 years this year. So we actually had never been here. So you got to think to yourself like, wow. So we touched down in Perth, stayed with a friend from our hometown for the night. Didn't really get to see it, but I think the adrenaline
Was running.
I mean, you got to understand, we sold a house, sold our car, sold our furniture.
Sold our business.
Sold a business. We had a container of stuff coming over here, which was an absolute waste of money. Our house in South Africa on the screen. We live pretty close to the beach. We're very fortunate to live in this area. It's a beautiful house.
Yeah. 600 meters from the beach.
Yeah, and also 600 meters from our favourite pub at that time in East London.
It was heaven.
I actually gave the new owners the keys on the Sunday.
Yeah.
We left on the Sunday.
Yeah.
But in South Africa, it takes a bit of time for houses to settle. Not like here where you've got like 29 days or whatever it is. It takes months to settle. So we actually arrived here. Now, they only packed our container up a couple of days before that handover happened. So when we got here, we stayed one night in Perth, a few nights in Melbourne with another mate, and on to Brisbane, where Sue's, fortunately, her brother lives in Brisbane, because he sort of came and fetched us from the airport and, you know, took us to his house, and that's where we were going to stay, weren't we?
We eventually got a rental. Our container hadn't arrived yet, so we spent a couple of weeks, I would say, on a blow-up mattress, and we bought a 2-seater couch. So we had a blow-up mattress, a 2-seater couch, 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 knives, 2 forks, 1 pot, 1 frying pan. So we were pretty much already living the caravan lifestyle.
And the funny thing, like our rental was a 4-bedroom house with like 2 little lounges, double garage, and well, we only needed one. Well, we had nothing to put in the other rooms, so we shut all the doors, and we basically just lived in the lounge, the kitchen, our bedroom, the outside area, and sort of the garage. Like that's sort of part of the house. So
that was it,
yeah.
Absolutely. We then settled in. Worked in Brisbane for about 5.5 years.
Yep.
And through that time, we lost a very close friend, our best friend, suddenly and unexpectedly, within I think a 6-week period, after which it really made us reassess our lives and think, you know, what are we doing? We were doing the daily grind. You know, people say it's 9 to 5. For me, it was more like 7 to 7:30 with commute time on the train. And Derek was working a full-time job and just not happy in what he was doing. So he was a plumber in South Africa but couldn't work on the tools in Australia, so went into sales. And that pretty much got us to...
I just came home one day. So another thing we'd like to touch on is that unfortunately we don't have kids, can't have kids. So after my mate passed away, and suddenly it was young. He lived with us in a house in Brisbane for almost 2 years, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think that's what made it so tough, because he was in the family.
And he was a professional photographer as well, so he was sort of teaching me the basics. And anyway, I obviously came home one day from work after this all had happened. I looked at Sue, and at this time Sue was already working sort of partially from home, sort of going in the office once a week. And I just said to Sue, like, why don't we go and travel? Because like all we're doing is just living in this house, having to clean it, blah blah blah, which is fair enough. We've got to clean a caravan, but...
And I said, are you crazy, man?
Sue was like, looked at me and gone like, what are you thinking about? And I was like, well, you know, just take some time, have a think of it, and come back to me and have a chat to your boss. So a few weeks later, she came back to me and she said, look, you know, like, let's sit down and look at some numbers. And at that time, we had a little forward folding camper trailer. So when we arrived in Australia, we tried to do the camping. We started in a rooftop or tent rooftop, and then we bought a little forward folding camper. So we had to sell that. I didn't have a car big enough to tow at the time a caravan, so we had to get rid of that. I had a boat, we had to get rid of that. And we sat down, we looked at some numbers, and yeah, that's where it sort of all begun. It took us, I think from when we said we would do it, about 7 months to get on the road.
Yeah.
So around about that like April, May area, I think it was, we spoke about it, started looking at caravans. Now we had owned caravans in South Africa, like we said. No idea the ball weights and stuff like that in South Africa. In South Africa, if you got a ute and you got a caravan on the back, it looks okay.
And a tow hitch.
And a tow, you're good to go. So I had to learn all this new stuff, and we found a caravan in our budget. We found a car in our budget, and that's sort of like, yeah, it started. We bought the caravan before we bought the car. We had the caravan towed on the back of a truck to a storage unit because our house in Brisbane, North Brisbane, there's It's one of those 10-metre frontage, 30 metres deep one, and like that. You can't have a caravan on the front, so I had to put it in storage, not far from home. And then we actually needed a holiday, and we went over to New Zealand South Island for, I think it was 12 days, and we hired a camper.
Well, we did.
And I tell you in winter, because this is when I was trying to start my go down the photography line with my mate that passed away, and I wanted to go. Look, it's nice to go into the Brisbane city and take photos of the city that landscape photography is amazing. But I was getting a bit. Let's try and go abroad, and we got a good deal to go to New Zealand South Island. And we rented this camp and off we went, but we had no idea still about the toilets and your
so
water.
I'm sorry, can I jump in? So we rented a caravan that had a toilet.
Not a caravan.
I mean a camper van. It had a toilet and it had a shower. We never used the toilet and we never used the shower because we didn't know how to. We didn't know how they operated. And we didn't even use the heater because we didn't know how the gas heater worked.
No.
So
here we are. We've arrived in New Zealand, and we picked this thing. And they went through a bit of it, but I was a bit overwhelmed, and off we went. And I've got to say, look, we haven't travelled the world as such. We lived in London. You went over. I went to France. I went to Scotland. You went to France, didn't you?
I went to France. Yeah.
And I think on a honeymoon we were lucky enough to go to Thailand for a few weeks. I've been to sort of Singapore, New Zealand on the North Island, and I've got to say the South Island had to be one of my most favourite holidays I've ever had.
Yeah, it was spectacular.
The scenery is just breathtaking. Look, it's bloody cold, and we had no idea about free camping or anything like that, so we unfortunately we stayed at caravan parks while we were travelling. So we flew into Christchurch, and that was a debacle, wasn't it? On the way to Christchurch, it was too foggy. They had to return the plane to go to Auckland. We spent the night in Auckland Airport because we weren't allowed to leave. And then in the morning, down to Christchurch, lost that money. Anyway, big learning curve for us. Anyway, we hopped in this hire van, and I've got to say, it was one of the most amazing holidays we've ever had. But that was the sort of the journey. And now we had bought the caravan. We got a phone call when we were in New Zealand that they had sold the boat.
Yeah.
And we were then starting to look at cars. We managed to find the Ford Ranger that unfortunately broke down. And that was the sort of start of our journey.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I remember pulling out of Brisbane. I'd given up my job, and it was actually Australia Day weekend. 2020, so just before COVID. I'm pretty sure we've mentioned this before in our Bob, come here.
Come on,
That we, if we knew COVID was coming, most probably wouldn't have left. But hey, everything happens for a reason. And this was only supposed to be a 12 to 18 month trip. And look where we are today, 3.5 years down the road. So January next year will be 4 years. Now a lot of people ask us, why did we start YouTube? And this is my hand on my heart, is that I said to Sue, why don't we had a GoPro already, and I had a drone. So yeah, so the YouTube channel, I decided why don't we try and share our travels with our friends and family, especially our family back in South Africa. Now our friends are sort of scattered around the world. I've got friends still in England that I met there. We've got friends in Europe. I've got friends in America. I've got friends in New Zealand. We've got friends here, plus family, and I'm pretty sure elsewhere. And then we only started actually watching YouTube.
Yeah.
So we had this idea of doing the YouTube thing first, and then we jumped on, and back then there was not as many doing it.
No, not
and
as many.
We used to watch it religiously, and man, I tell you what, I'm pretty sure you guys are watching this. And it inspired us to.
We couldn't wait to
We
get
couldn't
on the road.
wait. We saw these videos. We just wow, and then obviously COVID hit, but we have already spoken about that. So it sort of slowed things down a bit, and with Sue being able to work remotely, it sort of turned into a remote job now because of COVID. We just thought, you know what, we got no kids. Bobby, come here. Don't knock the camera. We got no kids. Got nothing sort of getting us back to Brisbane. We sort of love this
Lifestyle.
travel family, sort of van fam that we've met. It took us a while to meet sort of people on the road that we sort of, I don't know, connected with.
I think it's also learning
We're also very like...
to be travellers. Like, you know, the first few months you tend to keep to yourself and you think, oh, you know, I can't go over and chat to that person or chat. You tend to just keep to yourself. And eventually you just get used to the lifestyle and you get used to chatting and meeting new people and chatting to new people in campgrounds.
So we've eventually met our first sort of travel fam. Chris and Carla, two thirsty travellers.
Yep.
Up in the Uluru
They were our
area.
firsts.
They were our first. We are still quite good friends to this day. Fortunately, they don't travel anymore, but they've got a new venture going. And then I think it was Paloob, working at Gawler Caravan Park. So if you don't know those new people, we actually stopped and worked for 5 months in a caravan park in South Australia. And that actually managed to get us the Land Cruiser, and we sold the Ford because it broke down. We met some people there.
Some amazing friends. Yeah.
Beautiful friends that are friends to this day. They might not travel full time anymore, but when we pass by, we stop and say good day. And then I think it really started happening on like Paloob. We travelled with them, and those are the people we actually said goodbye to today. So we hadn't seen them for a while, and then they were in the area, so we've been catching up. We've been fishing together. We've been going to the whalebone, and it's been messy, so it's been good. And but I'm sure we'll see them again, and I'm sure we're going to meet new people along the road.
And that is the amazing thing about the lifestyle. People that you meet, you tend to stay close to, and not only that, but you bump into them. Like, you're all ping-ponging off in different directions, but eventually you're coming across each other again.
And it's not that even like we don't talk to the people that were travelling and have stopped travelling. There's a lot of people that went for 12 months or just did 6 months or 2 months or 3 months. When we go past, we at least try and have dinner, or we'll stay and we'll catch up for a few days or something like that. So that is a big part of our life now. And just the thought of going back to Brisbane, for me at least, and it's almost like, I mean, we've been back through Brisbane in our 3.5 years, I think twice now, or maybe two or three times. And just the traffic and the way it is, it's just, I don't know, like currently in Exmouth, no traffic light. I can live here. Soon as I go through a town that's got a traffic light, I go, hang on, this is maybe not for me.
Things are getting serious.
Because we spend so much time out here and this and the beautiful space, and obviously, you know, it's not all rainbow and blue skies as such, because like we've had some weird weather this year, especially I think, like with a bit of rain here and there, where it's normally not supposed to rain up here until like the wet season sort of thing. But yeah, we thought we'd just put this little episode together because we get asked a lot.
We do get asked a lot. Like,
where
how
we from?
Did we end up? Well, where are we from? How did we get to Australia? How did we end up travelling? How did we end up in this lifestyle? And the thing is, we're just so lucky that we did, because I never would have thought 5 years ago if somebody told me I was would be living this lifestyle, I would have thought they were absolutely crazy. But we're very blessed in the fact that I can work remotely, and that does fund us to travel. You know, if it were a situation where I had to give up work, you know, we wouldn't have been able to afford it.
Migrated obviously quite late, mid-30s to Australia. And if you don't know, that coming from sort of like a third world country, it's quite a big hit financially. And when you arrive in sort of Australia, you got to understand, like, our super only started when we started working here, not from when we were, you know, 15, 16 years old.
That would have been beautiful.
So we couldn't just sell the house. We just got into the market, all of that kind of stuff. So it would never have been a possibility if Sue wasn't working.
Yeah.
That's just the way we still to this day travel Australia. So
but I need to start buying lotto tickets.
Yeah, we need to like, yeah.
I start buying lotto tickets. Maybe I'll win and I can stop.
I mean, it would be awesome to travel, obviously, full time. I mean, great, but we're still young. We still got that energy, baby, to work and make some money. And who knows where our next adventure will be, but a lot of you must probably think how much longer. We're going to try and push this for at least this year, next year.
Well, as long as we can.
And as long as we can, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people say, what are your plans for next year? Look, our plans always change. But at
the regular.
But at this stage, we're hoping, hold thumbs, we can get across to Tassie for the summer. It's something that we haven't been able to do because of COVID, obviously, and the planning around everything else that happens in the background to get a boat to Tassie for the summer. Hopefully, hold thumbs, we can get it right this summer coming. We can go over there for just short of 3 months, and then we will definitely be heading north to some areas like Arnhem Land we haven't done.
Arnhem Land would be beautiful.
It was totally get a few weeks up there, so we're going to try and plan that because everything has got a plan now. And across the Gulf, we didn't do Weipa when we did Cape, so there's a lot of that sort of stuff we would love to try and do next year. And if we're travelling the following year, 2025, correct me if I'm wrong.
Is that really 2025 the next year?
We definitely will be coming, hopefully, back to WA much more prepared.
Yes.
I've actually taken notes.
Bookings.
I've actually taken notes of the good campsites everywhere. So I'm like, I want to be 100 bloody on there trying to book it, and the dog sitters, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, guys, that's sort of. I hope that sort of
answered the question on who we are, where we come from, how we got here, and how we ended up in this lifestyle.
And you know, who the bloody hell are we? So there you go. You've got a little bit of a history of us.
So thanks for watching this week. If you've enjoyed the content and you'd like to support us to grow our channel, please hit the subscribe button down below. As I say, it costs nothing but really means a lot to us. So from Derek, Bobby and myself,
you guys have a good week. See ya.
Bye.